Hey, my name's Matt. I'm building a Sopwith Camel. I've been inspired by quite a few other videos on YouTube, so I thought, what the hell, I'll give it a go myself. So through this, I'll start documenting the process I go through making parts, and hopefully over time we'll start seeing a Sopwith Camel being built. Be warned, this is a slow process, it's a hobby project, I only get a few hours a week to work on it, and quite frankly I'm not in a rush. It takes what time it takes. For me it's more about the journey as opposed to the destination. If I wanted to Sopwith Camel tomorrow, I'd buy a kit set. I'm not. Instead, I bought a stack of timber. And believe it or not, it's a stack of timber left over after a year's worth of cutting in order to create other timber. And if this garage looks a bit cramped and busy, you're absolutely right, but it's substantially bigger than the garage I had about a month ago. So I'm actually feeling quite luxurious in the amount of space I've got. So yeah, so that's a bit about me, a bit about the project. Wish me luck. Kia ora. I have a couple of projects for today. The main one is to cut down one of these logs with black paint on the end, in particular this one. Cut that down. I want to see how the timber's reacted after the change in environment. I haven't mentioned it already, but the yellow dots indicate builder's timber, which is probably going to be unsuitable for aircraft use. The green dots indicate I may be able to get spars out of those, fingers crossed, and the black ones without any dots are somewhere in between. So out of the one I'm cutting today, this one, and that's going down the length of it, it's about 4.5 meters long. With a bit of luck, if the grain's not completely shot, I'll get some timber useful for adding to the stack I've got over here. Fingers crossed. But I have a bit of rearranging to do first before I can get access to that. Got my chosen beam out. I've changed my mind on which one it was, because this one was easier to get out of the stack. So I've just got it up at about chest height so I can mark it up, and it came out of this hole as opposed to that one, and came out of there because that, when I shook it, it moved, so clearly it wasn't being held down by anything, so I just slid straight out. So take the easy approach, and it still gets rid of one of the builder's pieces of timber. So what I'll do now is I've got to go through and I've got to find all the knots. Like this one's nice and easy, and I'll just take this cap off this pin. So I found a better knot to demonstrate on. Hope you can see that okay. So here's a humongous one, and if we follow it round, if I can tilt this safely, comes out through the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is just draw a line from there to the centre there. The top obviously better than the bottom. A little bit further. There you go, that's the bottom. And what that helps me to do is I'm picking the shortest path. If the other side was shorter, I would have gone around that way instead. But I'm picking the shortest path between the two to give me a kind of rough visual as to where the knot goes. Obviously it's not ideal, but hey, it works, and it works sufficient enough for me to work out where I'm going to get the best cuts from. So while I'm here, mark up this one as well. Small one. There's another big one. Decent timber obviously you want as few knots as possible. This is not good timber, so see what I can get out of it, and the rest I'll turn into firewood probably. Cool. I'll carry on marking up, and I'll come back in a moment. So we're marked up, so a couple of lines up, I guess that, yeah, another knot there, just moving along the log. This is the worst side, it's the one you want to do your planing on, and as you plan, you follow through to figure out where these knots end up. Most of them end up on this side down here. I might just spin that up, get a better look. So most of them end up on here. Through to this one, in the end. Here's an example of what I suspect is a spike knot. So let's put a circle around it because it finishes somewhere inside the timber. Don't know where. I could probably guess by following what's happening with the other one. So my pick is at angles down that way somewhere, but it doesn't come out the sides. So now that I've done that, the next thing is to take off the ends. So remove the black on the ends, which will then give me the grain direction. You can see on here it looks quite not very dense, but that could just be the angle of the grain. You can't quite tell until you look at the end of it. On this side, you can see the grain here is much more condensed. Same here if this is a bit light, but equally up the top here, you can see staining from mould. So up here, not particularly great. Fortunately, it doesn't do that all the way down. Right, this next stage, take the ends off. So this is the end and the cut off bit that goes with it. And I've already pre-measured this, but I'll just show you. Get the camera lined up. So got an inch and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 rings per inch at that point. Moving further across, not so great. And down here, hopefully you can see that inch mark. We're lucky that we're not even getting 4 rings per inch. It'd be more accurate if we line it with the, that's the way we cut it, but even still, we're getting 3 rings per inch, and that's obviously really bad. We definitely don't want that. So the only useful part of this timber is down this end for about 1.5 inches of a 6-inch piece of timber. But of course that doesn't take into account the knots, of which there's quite a few on this piece. Above it, I've got the piece taken off the other end, and this gives us an idea what the other end looks like. So I can compare the run through. Lots of variation can happen in the run through. For example, we've got this really wide piece here, wide grain. That's probably not good, but even with that, we're looking at least 6 grains per inch. But it'd be my preference to cut that out and not use it. These pieces further in, they're looking pretty good until we get to about here and it starts looking a bit dodgy. So there is potential for a few pieces to come out of this, but not great potential. And in the process of cutting, I'll actually have to cut on an angle to match the grain line. I'll have to is a strong word, but I will, because you might as well chop out as much of the rubbish as possible. The first thing to do will be to go back through the timber and cut it to length by cutting out the largest of the knots that's going to have the most impact. So that's the next stage. So I'm favouring the edge to the right, this top edge, because that's where the densest grain is. So I want to try and keep that, and down here I don't really care. That's going to be all rubbish. So my first mark is here, and that's because I've got a knot running from there all the way around, coming up somewhere around there, which will obviously ruin everything that's going to be in between that space. So I cut off there, and that end's basically rubbish. I might better get something out of that, but I'm not going to hold my breath. So from there I've got a reasonable length coming through to about here, and that's my next one, and that's because of this knot here coming up down here. So they'll cut that piece out, so that's all rubbish. More knots here, more knots, and I'll cut here. This knot comes out around about here. So I'll cut that section out, and then I'll keep the rest of the length, despite this knot here, because I think I'll end up keeping this chunk up here, and I'll cut it lengthways to figure out how that knot fits it. And this isn't looking too bad heading down. But we have mould up on this top ½ inch, and it looks shadowy down here as well, so it could be mould there too. So I'm about to start cutting the pieces that are cut out, which will hopefully contain a little bit of good timber in it. So what I've done here, this is an adjustable angle. I'm going to adjust it to roughly match the grain on this end, then check it with the other end, and then set it about halfway between the two. So between the two, with a bit of luck, I'll get some good straight grain out of this, or fairly flat. It looks straight from this angle, looking across the top. So next stage, adjust the saw blade, run this through, and see what we get. So the grain's looking flatter, which is good. Excellent to check is what the underside looks like. This piece is looking okay. This one will probably be cut out because we'll be cutting through at an angle like that. So I'll just give that a go. Look at the other piece. Move it around. That's probably a bit problematic, but we'll see how we go. That'll cut out. And there's a little knot on the end there, which will also be problematic. But from here we'll do the vertical cuts. I'll reset the table saw to be vertical, and we'll make this square again, using this as the bottom face. After probably just over 2.5 hours of work, and starting off with a large 4.5 metre log, chunk of lumber, this is what I'm left with. So one length at about 1.8, one at about 1 metre, and one at about 550 mil. They're all reasonably good sizes, about 60 by 60, and this one's about 60 by 80 roughly, but they still have knots in them. They're looking pretty good, but when it comes to cutting aircraft timber out, they won't end up this length in these dimensions. But still, not too bad out of a shitty piece of timber. The other thing got out of it was, just panning around, an entire banana box full of firewood. So they came out of as well, and panning around a bit more. Not vacuumed up the shed yet, but about 3 inches of sawdust in the bottom of that bag. So good afternoon's pottering about. I'm going to go grab some lunch, and if I feel motivated I'll do another stick, and then I'll crack on to those templates for the web ribs. Two more aircraft sticks out of another 4.5 metre length of timber. Really just sometimes feel like making toothpicks out of tree logs. But anyhow, got 2 more pieces that are usable. Down to 36. That last one I did was the one on the top left, which is now gone obviously. And that got turned into the sticks I just showed you, plus spin around. Yeah, I'm up to about 8 inches of sawdust down there now. That includes tidying up the shed a little bit. And in addition to that, that top one's empty. But yeah, another 2 boxes of firewood. So making progress. Let me introduce you to my Sopwith Camel. Somewhere in the stack of timber there's a Sopwith Camel ready to be carved out. It's a little bit like having a